Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Space Warfighter Talks. I'm your host, Bill Wolf, the president and founder of the Space Force Association. I'd like to thank our individual and corporate members for being here today. And if you're not a member of the Space Force Association, think about signing up. Go over to ussfa.org and look for details on how to become an individual member. We are honored today to have with us Colonel Rhet Turnbull. Sir, thank you so much for being with us today from the Space and Missile Systems Center currently, but it's going to be the Space Systems Command. Sir, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure, Bill. I'm really looking forward to the discussion today.
And sir, just because we do have a limited amount of time, can you provide just a quick, brief background of your career and how you ended up at Space and Missile Systems Center?
Okay, sure. Yeah. So I'm a career space guy. Started the Air Force as an astronautical engineer. Did my very first job at Force Ops, the Force Space Ops unit out at what was back then called Falcon Air Force Base, today Schriever Air Force Base. Fell in love with space operations, and I've been in and out of space ops my whole career, but really focused on the spaces overall and done a number of different space acquisition jobs. And came back here to SMC. It got an opportunity to stand up a new organization, which we'll talk about today, Cross Mission Ground Communications. We're really focused on modernizing our ground infrastructure. And considering that I started out as a second lieutenant, fighting some of the problems we had with our ground systems, it's been really fun to be able to come back now a couple of decades later and have an opportunity to really help make those ground systems better. And so I know that's something we'll get a chance to talk about today. So really excited to be here. It's an exciting time to be part of the Space Force, Space and Missile Systems Center, and just really the space enterprise writ large. So really, really glad to be here with you today, Bill.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And I know that your uniform still says U.S. Air Force. When is that going to get updated? Any word
day
on
now? Any day now, right? So I applied the day that they asked for applicants for Space Force. I put my papers in and been approved to transfer. We're just waiting that we've got to wait for the Senate to confirm all the field grade officers before we can transfer. But I've got the U.S. Space Force tapes ready to take off and replace here with the Air Force ones. I'm looking forward to that.
Yes, sir. Understand. Thank you. And you did mention that you were in charge of Cross Mission Ground and Communications Enterprise. What can you just briefly explain what the purpose, mission, and focus areas are for that directorate?
Sure, Bill. First, I'll tell everybody that it's a brand new organization, relatively new. We stood up less than 2 years ago as part of a reorganization at SMC, the Space and Missile Systems Center, that we refer to as SMC 2.0. And we stood up Cross Mission Ground and Communications, or ECX for short, at that time to take an enterprise approach to how we develop and field ground capabilities. And that was a different approach for SMC. Traditionally, the way that we field ground systems is every satellite that we build goes off and builds a unique ground system for that particular satellite system. Those systems works really well, but you get a lot of inefficiencies that way. It's expensive. They're often tied to a single vendor. And so if you want to make changes to that system, it can be costly. You can't reuse those systems often for different mission areas because they're so tied to one particular mission. And so as part of SMC 2.0, one of the key tenets that we focus on was how do we deliver value for the enterprise? And so we stood up this cross-mission ground and comms team to focus on doing exactly that. Let's take an enterprise approach to how we deliver these capabilities instead of a sort of the more traditional stovepipe approach. So the programs that are in the portfolio are those things which are modernizing the ground enterprise for multiple mission areas. And that's why it's right in our name, Cross Mission Ground, is we're focused on all those different mission areas and the intersection of those different mission areas across the enterprise. And so we've got programs like EGS, Enterprise Ground Services, which are delivering tactical C2 systems and services for the multiple different mission areas. Forge, which is modernizing the ground systems for the next gen OPIR missile warning satellites, but we'll also be able to bring in all the other different kinds of OPIR sensors that we're developing across the enterprise. The Space C2 program that you may know is Kobayashi Maru, which is changing how we deliver software to our Space Guardians and Joint Warfighters, and doing that across the enterprise, not just in specific stovepipe systems, but delivering really across multiple different mission areas. And so everything that we do is enterprise focused. How can we take what we're building and then deliver it to multiple different customers, deliver it to multiple different mission areas? And so it's been a fun journey the last couple of years getting to stand up in the organization and really shift the narrative of how do we focus away from single specific missions, which are still important, but really service multiple different mission areas.
Great. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. And just tell us a little bit about how ECX is bringing innovation to the Space Force, maybe in terms of the accomplishments and milestones that you've been able to achieve in the past year.
Yeah, sure. We've had a fantastic year, and I'm going to attribute that entirely to the awesome team that we have. We've got an amazing team of Guardians and Airmen, our Department of the Air Force civilians, FFRDCs, our support contractors, and then of course all of our industry partners that we work with. We like everybody else had to adapt to a new sort of environment where a large portion of our workforce was teleworking. We couldn't do things the way that we traditionally had, but I'll say that this team didn't miss a beat, and we continued delivering capability after capability over the last year. Some of the things that we've done include delivering the very first operational acceptance for our EGS prototype system called HOME, HEO operations migration to EGS. And what that system is doing is showing that we could take a legacy system, the SBIRS HEO payloads, move them to a new modernized ground infrastructure and operate those payloads in a completely lights out automated fashion. So we showed that we can do this from the architecture perspective. We can deploy a new modernized ground system. We showed that we can bring automation to the operations floors and actually automate some of these things in lights out mode so that we can free up those space operators to focus on more critical tasks like the protect and defend mission. And we did it all, while we had restricted access to the facilities and whatnot because of COVID, right? We were able to do that. Big success there. On our Space C2 program, we were able to deliver 3 different applications into this Combined Space Operations Center and get those ops accepted, tested, delivered. We delivered 3 applications to our coalition. We now have applications that we developed operating in the Canadian, UK, and Australian space operations centers. We just had a successful test this week, in fact, at the NSDC, the National Space Defense Center, where we were able to show end-to-end one of our C2 systems was able to do a successful test end-to-end to show that it all worked. Just a tremendous number of successes this year. You asked about innovation. So we look at that in a number of different ways, right? And so one area is technology. We definitely want to innovate on technology. One of the ways that we're doing that is by structuring all of our programs to use agile principles so that we can deliver capability very quickly in small chunks. We often call them MVCs or MVPs, minimum viable capabilities or minimum viable products. And we don't wait to deliver the whole thing at the end. We work with our operators. We say and ask them. We call it pain points. What's the biggest pain point you have? What's the most bang for the buck problem that I can solve right now? We solve that one problem, deliver it relatively quickly, and then we iterate on it. Okay, what's the next thing that we can do? And that allows us to innovate relatively quickly because our operators are able to see in real time. Oh, I didn't think about that. Oh, you can do that. Well, if you can do that, then maybe I'd like this capability, and that really lets us move fast. We're working with a number of commercial partners to bring in what the commercial businesses are doing. As you know, the commercial space industry is booming and investing a ton of money in capabilities, and we want to tap into that. A couple ways that we're doing that on our data transport side, we're using commercial apertures to fly some of our Space Force missions. So partnering with some of the commercial providers who are building a lot of antennas that we can then tap into and use and actually use those to fly Space Force missions. We call that commercial augmentation. So that's a really exciting mission area, and I think a big growth area for us. We're working with a lot of small businesses and non-traditionals. We took part in the first Space Force Space Pitch Day, where we awarded a whole bunch of contracts right on the spot. Literally wrote the contracts right after the companies came in and did their pitches. So the cross-mission ground team is working on 11 of those to deliver capability in a number of different mission areas from people who traditionally wouldn't do business with the Department of Defense because the process is so cumbersome, but we're able to cut through all that red tape, get contracts awarded, and get some of that capability deployed relatively quickly. We did some prototype hardware to develop new phased array antenna technology and deployed that in the fall out to Schriever Air Force Base, where we were able to show that a new technology using phased array and electronically steered arrays was able to control and command multiple satellites in multiple orbital regimes simultaneously from a single antenna, which will be a huge game changer for the enterprise, where today we still use parabolic antennas and it's one antenna, one satellite, right? And so that doesn't scale really well. And so we're able to show, hey, we can bring in some new technology. And all that was over the last year. So it's been a tremendous year, a team that's really just going 100 miles an hour. We had to pivot a little bit like everybody did to adapt to some of the new work conditions, but we did it and we didn't miss a beat.
Sir, that's quite a report card. Very well done. And as you said, in these times of COVID, where everyone has been working remotely and really having to figure that out. So very well done. I assume the Space Pitch Day is as a result of working with SpaceWorks. Is that correct? The stand-up of that new organization, or is that independent?
It was that we did that before SpaceWorks. I think that process, SpaceWorks will probably transition that process going forward as we get SpaceWorks up and running. It's so the same team that did that Space Pitch Day is responsible for getting SpaceWorks stood up. So I expect you'll see more of that kind of thing come out in the future. We didn't do one this last year because of COVID. Those things really work best when it's in person and you can, eyeball to eyeball with the founders and the companies that are coming in to pitch their ideas. But really looking forward to doing the next one of those soon. And my guess is that SpaceWorks will lead that.
Yes, sir. Great. Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about DTRN? And can you share with us modernization efforts in this area?
Sure. Yeah. DTRN stands for Data Transport Receive Network. And it's just an acronym we use to sort of encompass all the different things that we're doing across the enterprise to get the bits where they need to go. And so there's several different components to that. There's a space-to-space piece, right? Today, our satellites, for the most part, don't talk to each other, right? We want to fix that so that we can have satellites talk to each other, even across different orbital regimes or different constellations, different types of missions, so that we can, basically make every satellite a Wi-Fi point in the sky. And that really helps to add some resiliency to your network. There's the space-to-ground piece. How do we modernize that? I talked a little bit about what we did with the phased array prototypes. We call that program MBMN, multi-mission, multi-band antennas, and that it will show that we can use this new technology to replace or augment some of the parabolics. We're bringing in the commercial capacity through programs like commercial augmentation. We're working with some federal partners, other federal government agencies who have antennas, but don't use them nearly as much as we use ours. Like NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, for example, has got 5 antennas that on a day-to-day basis they're not using, but for a couple hours a day. I would love to be able to use those. So we're partnering with them to be able to bring those into our network so that we can tap into those and use those. Let me give just a quick, just sort of vignette to sort of show you where we are and where we've got ahead, right? So I joined the Air Force, Bill, in 1995. And back then, we had about 12.5 Air Force Satellite Controlled Network antennas, AFSCN antennas. Today, any guesses how many antennas we've got?
More than that.
About 12.5 Air Force. And we don't call them now Space Force now, so we call them Satellite Controlled Network, SCN. We got the same number that we had in 1995. We've got more than double the number of satellites today that we had then. And in a few years, I've seen the launch manifest. In a few years, we're going to have double that number again. And so that just doesn't scale, right? Because each of those parabolic antennas can talk to one satellite at a time. And that's just, right, that's not going to scale. So we know that we've got to do something different there. And so we are working with the Space Force on what we call the force design to help us figure out what is the architecture we want to go build, and then actually go build that. And it's going to be a hybrid architecture. It's going to include commercial. It's going to include other government agencies. It's going to include new technologies like phased array, probably eventually, our coalition partners, right? And then of course, we'll probably still be using those same dozen and a half satellite control network antennas too, but we're going to have to augment them with a lot of other capability. And then that gets the data from the space to the ground, but then you've got to do something once it gets on the ground. So we're modernizing that too, right? Many of these antennas today have got a slow serial line connecting, the antenna out to the operations center. And so that one, it's not very resilient because somebody could cut that line, and two, it doesn't have a lot of capacity. So we've got a program called Mesh1T. The T stands for terrestrial. We're actually got requests for prototype proposals out on the street now to hear back from industry on how would you modernize that ground network antenna. And we're to get back to innovation, and what we're trying to do with the commercial partners is we're looking for commercial vendors to bring in and propose a commercial solution, sort of a network as a service solution offering, so that we don't have to go build it ourselves. We'll go to the people who know how to do this and let them do it for us.
Yeah, great. And you talk a little bit about the threats. And ironically, General Dickinson was just testifying in front of the Senate Armed Services Committee this morning and afternoon about the importance of modernizing capability based on the emerging threat. So what can you tell us about how you see ECX's role in addressing current and future threats?
Yeah, thanks, Bill. I think we play a critical role, right? It doesn't matter how many things we launch and put on orbit if we can't talk to those satellite systems. If we can't produce space effects for the joint warfighter, right? It doesn't matter how many things we launch. It doesn't matter how much is on orbit. We've got to be able to command and control those capabilities, both at the tactical and operational level. We've got to be able to move the data around the enterprise, get it to where it needs to go, and get it to the operator that needs it. And so cross-mission ground is right in the middle of that. That is our wheelhouse, and that's the mission area that we're focused on, is doing that, right? And so I think one is it's a critical piece. We are a critical enabler for the enterprise, and that's why we're focused on providing these capabilities across multiple mission areas. But I also think we play a deterrent role in this. I spent part of my career when I wasn't doing space, doing the deterrence mission at U.S. Strategic Command and elsewhere. And so I'm really passionate about that mission, right? And I think the most important thing we can do to maintain our preeminence in space, to support our joint warfighters, is to make sure that we don't actually have to fight, right? And we want to deter aggressive action against the United States. Today, our ground capabilities are in such a state that they actually don't deter anyone, right? Because they're relatively fragile, right? They're relatively single point of failure. I don't have a lot of them. Those AFSC antennas don't have a lot of those. And so if you wanted to take out those capabilities, you wouldn't have to take out that many targets to have a pretty big impact, right? We want to make that decision calculus much more difficult, so that the adversary who would want to attack us would look and say, look, it's easier to attack on the ground than it is in space, but man, their ground system is so resilient, it's got so much capacity that there's no way I can hit it and actually produce the effect I want. So I'm going to choose not to hit it, right? And so that's where we're headed, certainly. And I think cross-mission ground is right in the middle of that. That's what we're focused on, adding extra capacity, adding extra resilience, adding multiple paths so that you can't take out, there's not one node you can take out, and you take out our ability to C2 our systems, right? And that makes it makes that, that decision of, is it a good day to attack the United States, a much more difficult question to answer.
And the answer is always going to be, and should be.
It's always going to be not today,
not
right?
Today.
That's our goal, is not today.
Yep, that's great. And, a lot of announcements about the new organization, Space Systems Command. It's going to be stood up as a field command underneath the Space Force. How is the new Space Systems Command improving your process to support your mission accomplishment?
Yeah, Bill, I am excited about Space Systems Command. I think it's only going to make it better. Right. So we made some huge strides when we did SMC 2.0 to really flatten the organization, to make it much more lean, much more agile. And Space Systems Command is going to do that even more. Right. So if you look at how Space Systems Command is going to be structured, it is going to be a lean, flat, agile organization. We've eliminated 2 levels of command. So we're going to have, just 3 levels of command in the organization now, which really makes the organization, just super lean and be able to move super fast, right? So by example, the Space Systems Command commander will work for the Chief of Space Operations and the Secretary of the Air Force. Right below that will be the PEO for Space Enterprise, and right below that is Cross Mission Ground and Comm. That's it. 1, 2, 3 layers, and that's it. Right. So there's no bureaucracy between me and my warfighting customer. And if you need a decision made, it's very easy to get that decision made. So I'm really excited about where Space Systems Command is headed. I think it's going to take what we started with SMC 2.0 and make it even better.
Yes, sir. And I know we have limited time, but I do want to, the reason why we have these live events is so that we can get some audience interaction. So if you don't mind, I'm going to ask a question from the audience. If you can answer it, great. If you can't, that's okay too. So it is, how do you foresee the allocation of new ground-to-space assets, i.e. MBMM ESAs, being used for operational use? For the industry-based developing new spacecraft capabilities, when could it expect that MBMM be online to support use of these capabilities to avoid developing its own space-to-ground links that would unnecessarily overlap?
Okay, a lot in that question. Now, I can't speak right now specifically to when the MBMM will be fielded and operational. What we've done just this year was a prototype to prove that the technology works, and we're working out to transition that into a program of record and get it out into the field. But the important thing is that system, when fielded, will work with everything that's on orbit today and everything that we plan to launch, right? So from a spacecraft operator perspective, if you're compatible with our current architecture, you'll be compatible with MBMM, right? And so I don't think that that's there's not a key decision point that a spacecraft operator has to make whether I go to the new system or the old system. We're going to be compatible. And in fact, we're doing the same thing on the commercial side where we're using commercial antennas. We're using those to augment the existing systems. It's not like I have to go put new receivers or transmitters on board our spacecraft to be able to do that, right? So I don't think it's necessarily a decision point. It will eventually, once we have the capability out in the field, certainly enable us maybe to do some other things, to use some different frequency bands, maybe to use wider bandwidth data links, those kinds of things. And so and those have a longer lead time if you're going to get those kinds of capabilities on orbit. So our role in that is to work with the space systems architect to figure out what is the right time to bring those capabilities into the enterprise and work on that. But for now, we're really focused on being backwards compatible with everything that we have.
Great. Thank you, sir. How is the new organization going to deliver capabilities more rapidly to the warfighter?
So I think one is the organization is flat, right? Again, I already talked about, hey, we eliminate 2 echelons of command. Everybody knows the fewer decision makers that are involved in making a decision, the faster you can go, right? And so I think that's going to help a lot. We're really focused on being an agile organization that drives decisions down to the lowest level. And so I think that will help us move faster. And then another area is where I think Space Systems Command is really going to help is to bring unity of effort across the entire Space Force enterprise, right? Today, there are a number of different organizations that deliver capabilities for the U.S. Space Force. And that's going to remain true in the future, right? What Space Systems Command is going to help do is bring unity of effort to all of those different activities. And that does help you move faster because now you can, you don't bump into each other. You can deconflict what each other is doing, right? And I'll give you a quick example of how we're doing that today. And I think that's only going to get better under Space Systems Command is over the last year, we stood up something called the Program Integration Council, or the PIC. And this was something that Joe Raymond, the Chief of Space Operations, asked us to go do, to integrate and bring unity of effort across all these different organizations that are delivering capability. And so today, the members of the PIC include all those people who are delivering capability. It includes the SMC commander, and eventually will be the SSC commander, the National Reconnaissance Office, the Space Development Agency, the Missile Defense Agency, the Space Rapid Capabilities Office, and the Department of the Air Force Rapid Capabilities Office. So all these people and organizations who are delivering capability all together this week, an end-to-end operational demo where we were able to bring in capabilities from multiple organizations with our test organization and show end-to-end that the capability works, and do it much more quickly because we're able to synchronize what everybody's doing. All right.
I think I got your back, sir. Well, sir, you answered a question I've been having for a while, which is how do you take all the efforts that all different organizations are doing and combine them? So yeah, that PIC is exactly, it's brilliant. If people want to learn more about what's happening in the PIC, is there any information that you can provide where folks can go to get information? Is there some kind of report that's spit out by the PIC so that people can see what's going on?
I don't think we have anything yet. My recommendation would be to contact SMC Public Affairs,
okay,
and go from there, and we'll see what kind of information we can get out. But I agree with you. It's a huge success story, and it shows how we can all work together to deliver unified capability for the warfighter, and we can do it really, really quickly.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Hey, I really appreciate you taking time today. If it's okay with you, I'd like to set up a follow-on discussion, and so we can just kind of see what's going on in your organization as you continue to progress down the development of the capabilities and continue to provide those to the space warfighter, if that's okay with you. Sir, any closing
comments? Bill, absolutely. Would love to do that.
Great. Sir, thank you so much for being a member of the Space Force Association. It's important. Our individual members are really the backbone of the organization. So thank you for your support, and thank you for taking time today. I really do appreciate it. Any closing comments from you, sir?
Thanks, Bill. It was fun. I appreciate you setting this up. I appreciate the work that Space Force Association is doing to support the Space Force and get the message out about what we're doing. As I said up front, it is an exciting time to be part of the Space Force, to be part of Space Missile Systems Center, and looking forward to being part of Space Systems Command when we get that set up. What I would say, I guess the message, I know there's a lot of industry partners watching this, right, is come work with us. We want to hear your ideas. We want to work with you. We really are focused on how can we leverage all these capabilities that the commercial sector has to help our Space Force Guardians. So really would look forward to those conversations. So look me up. I'm on LinkedIn, and contact me, and we'll set up a time to talk, and would love to hear about what your company can do and what ideas that you have to help out the Space Force.
Thank you, Colonel Turnbull, for your time. I really do appreciate it. Have a great Space Force day. Semper Supra.
Semper Supra. Thanks, Bill.
All right, bye now.
All right, out here.